Hey guys, so Illusion Connect is now globally launched. Now I played this back in like the test version of the game, kind of like the beta version, and I got pretty far. I thought it was pretty fun, and as I was playing it, I was keeping notes in my head of what characters I felt were really strong, and that was pushing me through content easily. So I wanted to go over what I think some of the strongest characters are. Now this is going to be based on just the characters that I've had, but I've got quite a bit of SSRs. So we're going to mostly focus on the SSRs. Now there's a lot of SRs that are viable and good, but we're going to focus on the SSRs. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on who I think are the strongest or the most useful. So this isn't going to be in any particular order, but I will try to put some of the ones I think are a little bit stronger towards the end of the video, just so you can kind of, compare. But it's not in an exact order, but at the end, I think will be a couple of characters I think are the strongest. First, we're going to talk about Nicola here. Obviously, she looks really cool. So one thing that's neat about her is all of her attacks decrease the target's damage resistance rate by 33%. And that's for 3 turns. And 3 turns is a pretty long time. So just having that on all of her attacks is pretty buff. So your characters, so it's almost like having an attack boost, right? If you're lowering their stats, lowering their defense stats. So in a way, so it depends on who she's attacking, but who is she gonna attack? So she can attack 2 enemies with this. All of her boosts tend to attack or kind of attack the highest HP unit, so that kind of where she slacks off a little bit. That can be helpful because a lot of people tend to put tanks out and then want to heal their tanks and keep a beefy front line, so she is going to lower their defense because people are going to try to heal up their tanks. But she attacks 2 enemies with her unique attack. And her other ones are pretty good too. So she's definitely one to look out for. She's pretty decent. Miyuki, I think, is very fascinating. Now she's going to be one that's going to be pretty easily accessible. So I don't know if I'd go super hard to get her. They always talk so long. But all of her attacks decrease the target's rage by an additional 330. So what the rage is like this meter that builds up, and then they'll be able to do their big attacks, kind of like their supers. So she'll decrease it. So that's really good. And she has a AoE. So in my opinion, in this game, AoE is king. Okay, so if you've played the game, you can kind of notice boards can be flooded fairly easily. Even during the story mode, you can tell like a lot of the characters just like make a lot of dudes. So AoE is very strong in this. In my opinion, some of the strongest characters are the AoE characters. But there's counters put into place. Some of the characters counteract these. You'll see that in a bit. But anyways, back to her. So she has that kind of passive built in that's really strong. Plus she's got AoEs, and her other moves deal a decent amount of damage as well. So she's one definitely to, keep in mind. Plus she summons a giant cat, Just a quick note. I wasn't too impressed with her. Not saying that she's bad. Just because she's SSR, she's going to have some decent stats. But she's not my favorite. She makes a shield. That's cool. She can do a lot of damage to a single enemy. And, make a shield. She's not bad. Just not super impressive. Alright, so we're going to talk about one of my favorite characters. Now, I don't think she's, super strong or anything. But I think she's worth, taking a look at here. Her passive, when she dies, she summons 3 shadows of herself that receive 120% of her attack, 50% of her health, and 50% of her, defense, and 50% of her HP. Okay, so she summons things that can do a lot of damage, but they're kind of easy to kill. The reason she's not that strong is because AoE is so good that it kind of counteracts all of her little summoned minions. Her unique skill is pretty strong, so it deals 400% damage, and it increases her max HP by 25%. So that is a pretty strong unique skill. It does a bunch, and she's going to become more tanky, so it's going to be even harder to kill her. In some cases, you can even just use her as a pseudo tank. But I think she's pretty good, but not worth getting over some of these other characters we're going to be talking about. I want to talk about Deanna really quick, not because I think she's super good, but because I thought she was like okay for an SSR. When she appears, she restores the ally leader's health by 33%, which is like okay. There's going to be a lot of missions and things where that's going to be good. There's characters that just attack the leader, and she can kind of counteract some of that. She's like okay. You know, there may be even some SRs that are just, you know, comparable. I find them more fun to play with. Alright, so we're going to talk about Hershey here. So here is her combat passive. When she appears, she deals 66% damage to all enemy partners and an additional 200% damage to sorcerer class partners. So 66% is just like okay damage. You may be able to finish some people off. It's not going to like kill anybody generally, right? But I think some of the sorcerers are the strongest, and you'll see that in a bit, but I think she can help kind of counteract that, but she's still doing some AoE damage. So I just wanted to mention her because I think she's a good counter, but also still just decent in general. Alright, so we're wanting to talk about a tank here. So I think this is a very good tank. So when it says she, I know it looks like a guy, she, I don't know. You know, anime games, I don't know. But so basically whenever he, she, whatever it is, dies, you get it back into your hand, and then you can play it again, which I think is really strong because near some of the, you know, some of the tough missions, you may get to a spot where you're running out of guys. Like you've played all your cards and you're kind of just running on spells, and he's really good. But the unique is pretty buff. So it does like a back row splash attack. So having a tank that does a good amount of damage to the back line is strong. So it's like the back row plus one up in the middle row. So it's like all these little tentacle things that attack everywhere. I think it's really good. And it increases the attack by 5% and defense by a percentage. So I think he's one of the stronger tanks, but not the strongest in my opinion. Now we're going to talk about my favorite tank, which I think is one of the strongest like tanks. Okay, so one thing it's really cool, when Angela appears, she revives one dead ally. So that has a lot of cool combos together. So let's say he died, the previous tank died, right? You get a card of him in your hand, you play her, you can resummon him on the board, and you still have the card in your hand, you can play him, you can do crazy stuff like that. You know, with some of a couple of characters ago where she dies and she summons like 3 shadows of herself. Now if you play her, she dies, then you play Angela, you can summon her again, and if she dies again, she summons 3 more. So it could be, I think it's one of the funner mechanics in this game, reviving an ally, because of how a lot of the cards work. So that's a really cool combat passive right off the bat. And then we'll look at her unique skill. So she stops attacking and enters a defensive mode. So she can't attack, but she increases damage resistant rate by 80%, and you can't stop her from doing that. To my knowledge, I've never seen anybody do it. And taunts the enemy team for 2 rounds. So for 2 rounds, the enemy team is forced to attack this unit that reduces damage by 80%. So it's crazy how strong she is. And her other attack are really strong as well. So one attack, she makes a shield, and the other one just deals like a chunk of damage. So she makes a shield for one of her attacks, and then the other one, she stops attacking but becomes like this impenetrable wall, and then she can bring somebody back to life. So in my opinion, I think Angela is the strongest tank. I definitely recommend getting her if you get the chance. And plus she looks awesome. In my opinion, my favorite character design is Angela. Now we're going to talk about the characters I think are like amazing. So we're going to talk about Yuffie here. Yuffie? Yuffie? I always call her Yuffie. I don't know how to pronounce that. But so she is very good. She's going to be one of the sorcerer AoEs that I was telling you about that I think is very strong. Okay, so when she's on the board, she's just going to straight up increase AoE damage. and increase it even further for herself. So she's going to buff her own AoE damage, but she's going to buff everybody's AoE damage. And it's really not that hard to pull off this combat passive. So it's just amazing. So her unique skill, she just does AoE damage to everybody by a pretty large percentage, and if they cost 14 or more, they're taking additional percentage of damage. She's so strong. She kills, like, she does AoE damage, which is going to be good for, like, going through the content, but she does an additional chunk of damage if they're rare characters, basically, or expensive, and they tend to be strong characters. So your opponent is going to get punished for playing buff units just because she's so strong. So that's why I think she's definitely one of the strongest. She may even be the strongest, but I think there's one that might outshine her a little bit, and that's going to be your girl here. So her combat passive, every enemy partner on the battlefield increases her attack by a percentage. So that's insane. So if you can have like 9 people on the field, and right there it's 7%, you can do the math on that. That's a chunk of damage, and she's gonna hit everybody, as you'll see. So so she attacks the enemy team with 200%, and the enemy summons take even like 1.5% even more damage. So she's gonna come out. I loved playing her whenever the enemy had like a full board almost. Like, you knew they're gonna do that. They're gonna flood the board with a bunch of dudes. You play her and she just kills everybody. It's insane. And here she attacks an enemy column, and her regular attack just deals a decent amount of damage. I think she's definitely one of the strongest. I don't know about the strongest, and I didn't get every SR character by any means, but from my experience and, like, you know, playing through the game, the characters I thought were the most useful, these were the characters I thought were the most useful. Now, there's SR characters I used that I thought were very good as well. I'm not going to cover them in this video, but I may cover that in a different video. But I just want to talk about the SSRs because I think they're the most exciting. I did really enjoy this game, so I'm going to be playing it. I may not go like super hardcore or anything, but I may make a guild. We'll see. But definitely check out my other video I did. I did a bunch of summons, so if you want to see like maybe how some of the rates are, some of the characters, seeing what summoning animations look like, whatever it is, you may want to check that out. I thought I had a blast doing all those summons. It was a lot. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. Also check out my Instagram. I play a bunch of gacha games, so you can see my daily pulls and see what I got going on. And you can see some behind the scene things. So make sure you go check out my Instagram. God bless you guys. Have fun with Illusion Connect. I wish you luck in your summons. You have a blessed day, y'all.